Welcome to the Indonesia International Piano Competition Feature Artist Interview. Today we are going to be joined by the Neeman duo, pianist Stephanie and Edward Neeman. Guys, how are you?
Hi, good. Good to see you, Edith. It's really
good to see you too. How's everything going on with you both?
Yeah, pretty good. I think we're pretty fortunate and blessed to still be able to do what we love to do at this crazy time. So, yeah, I think we're doing okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And, you have to kind of make the best of it, right? Don't you?
Yes, for sure. So you both are now in Australia, that is correct?
That's correct. Yeah.
So if we can start a little bit by I just want to know a little bit more about you guys. So if you can just kind of introduce yourself a little bit, when did you start learning the piano? When did you decide to be a musician? And what do you do now? That will be really, really great.
Right. Okay, so I guess we have to go far back, right? Because I grew up in a musician family, so I started playing piano when I was 2. Just because my mom was a teacher, it was easy for her to just do that, right? And then obviously you go through the training, and you started when you were 4, right? Or something like that?
Yeah, I started when I was 4.
And Edward actually was born in the States, and he grew up there until he was 14, and he moved to Australia when he was 14. And did his undergrad in Australia. And then we both moved to New York City and studied at the Manhattan School of Music in New York. And Edward continued his doctorate study at Juilliard, and I followed my teacher to Cincinnati to get my doctorate there. After that, we moved to a few different cities in the States. I had this visiting professor job at University of Utah in Salt Lake City. And the last one was a tenure track position in Georgia before we moved to Australia. And we actually have moved to Australia for about 2 years now. We live in the capital city, Canberra. And I was hired to be the CEO and artistic director of Music for Canberra, which is the organization that manages the Canberra Youth Orchestra and many other wonderful programs. And now Edward is the piano lecturer at the Australian National University. And besides all this stuff that we're doing in Australia, we actually are still very much involved with the conservatory in Jakarta, the LLM Conservatory of Music. And obviously, we still play a lot together as a piano duo and concertizing in Australia at the moment. So.
That's, I just in my mind, it's you both are the definition of what we call a complete musician. I feel like you do
nice.
Everything. It's just how do you both balance that? And then you both perform as soloists and also with each other, right? So
yeah.
How's that experience so far? Just juggling a lot of different things together.
Well, I suppose you make time for the things that you love, and when you're a musician, it's your job and it's also your hobby, and it's also it just takes over every aspect of your life. So, and we kind of knew that when we got into it, and we're both very fortunate that we get to kind of do what we always wanted to do, which is great on one level, and it's a lot less glamorous for sure than it may look on the outside, because there's a lot of work, way more work than you'd expect. Way more work than we definitely expected, I think.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, you think that once you've made it as a professional, then you're set, right? And then once you've learned, say, 5 Beethoven sonatas, then how bad can learning the other 27 be? It never actually gets easier, does it? It's always a struggle, and you always have to be a student. You always have to learn more, like any other creative profession. So and you also have to have realistic expectations and time goals. And a lot of times, when we have completed a project, it looks like, hey, we just spun that out some weekend. But often there's years of time behind that. When we got it ready and then we put it aside for a bit, and then we performed something a few times and didn't like it, made some changes, and then sort of at the end of a long period of just incubating one particular idea, it sort of bore fruit. Yeah. So. And that's just the nature of how things are, because there's just so many immediate things that come up, right? Like if somebody asks you to accompany a recital next week, then you got to do that. You know, if we get called at the last minute to do some concert or something, then that just has to happen. So yeah, and obviously teaching and stuff, those are not responsibilities that you can put off. So the bigger projects, you just have to know that that's really what you want to do, and just whenever you have the time, just do a little bit more work and make it happen eventually.
Yeah, like long-term priority and short-term priority. I guess that's what you're trying to do. Yeah. I guess, yeah.
That's completely true, because I feel like at some point as musicians, we all go into teaching, right? It's just like, I mean, we all started as a performer, but at some point, I think we all turned to teaching a little bit here and there as well. So that's also the responsibility that I feel like we all have to like somehow take as well. So how is teaching in Australia? So Edward, how are you teaching in Australia right now? Is it everything through online? Do you teach like undergraduate students, graduate students? How's that going?
Yeah, I teach mostly undergraduate students, and I do a bit of PhD supervision, which has been really instructive, since that's like really, I'm just starting in that area, so that's really exciting. With regard to the lessons, the performing, we did have to do everything remotely, sort of around the April-May period, which was quite difficult. So all the lessons were online, and a lot of the events or the courses that required us to meet in person had to be deferred. So for example, there is a requirement that we have to do a concert practice thing, and that had to be in person because of the wording of the description of the course, things like this. So that had to just be delayed until July, and then we had to get special permission to put that on. Same thing with chamber music. We're very fortunate in Australia that we have so few COVID cases, and so the restrictions are a lot less than they are in other parts of the world. But at the same time, you know, the Australian universities really depend on our international students. So they are really falling over themselves to be extra careful so that we can return to inviting our international students back as quickly as possible.
Right, for sure.
So,
Tiffany, I do want to ask you about the music for Canberra. That sounds like a very exciting job. Can you tell me a little bit more about it?
Yeah, so the story is actually I just resigned. So, but that has nothing to do with anything. It was a wonderful opportunity, and it was really good for me. And I think I had a great time doing it as well. It was sort of a bit different from just being a pianist, right? So you have to sort of convening these programs as an artistic director, but also because the job also entails the business side of it. That's where the CEO thing comes in. So it was really interesting to sort of juggle both sides of the world and sort of, you know, help you to understand the different perspective, you know, as a musician. And I think it was really fun. I had a great time. And it's just, again, another thing that you have to think about as what is your priority in life at the moment, right? The workload was absolutely insane. But that's why actually I resigned, because there was definitely no time for me to perform or teach when I had that job. So, and obviously, you know, I have a 7-year-old son, James, who is growing up, and I barely get to see him at all. And I thought, we thought that our priority at the moment is to make sure that we have sort of that balance in life where you can still do a little bit of performing and teaching and also have a family, you know. So,
right.
Yeah,
Sure.
it was fun. Yeah.
What was the program? You said that something about a youth symphony, right?
Yeah, so the program was actually Canberra Youth Orchestra. So I think every big cities in Australia has their own youth orchestra. So that's the Melbourne one, Sydney, and Adelaide, and Western Australia, and Perth. Yeah, and then of course there's the national one that they have. It's called the Australian Youth Orchestra. So so I was in charge of the Canberra Youth Orchestra. So that entails with, you know, the operational side of the orchestra management, but also like to the point that choosing the right repertoire with the conductors, or observing the quality of the programs, and inviting artists to play as a soloist. And the last one that was really exciting was Christian Lee, the little, 10-year-old, 11-year-old prodigy that, is from Melbourne, and he's just fabulous and onto many really great things. And that was really fun. So.
Right. That's, I always find it interesting when we musicians like ended up with a career that requires so much more than just like the things that we learn in school. Because I feel like that's always the way that people think about it, right? It's just like you go to school and then you're like set, and then everything is good, and then you learn everything that you need to know. But I feel like as life goes on, it's just like there's always more things to like learn and more things to adjust and everything. So it's really, really great to hear like both of your stories. So I just want to ask you a little bit about the program that you chose to perform for us, the recording. It's very, very enjoyable, but I do want to know a little bit about your perspective on it. Like, why did you pick the piece, and how did you pick the piece, and did it take a long time to like put it together?
So, yeah, you want to do that?
Well, we recorded the Coriolan Overture by Beethoven. We wanted to use some Beethoven because it's a big Beethoven year. And
I think it was requested by you guys.
Yes, it is called a Beethoven Festival. So I think Beethoven, somehow that guy has to come in somewhere. But
yeah, I mean, and the thing about Beethoven is he hasn't written a lot of great stuff for piano four hands, which is kind of our specialty. Or even,
what do you mean great stuff? He has written great stuff, but it's not as popular as, let's say, other composers.
Yeah, we were looking at that, and the Coriolan Overture is really where our heart was, because it is fiery. It's really catchy.
Not too long, and sort of kind of gets the gist and the dramatic effect of Beethoven. We thought, and it's always nice to also think about, bringing sort of that, orchestra genre and sort of having that tradition where people not used to be able to have the privilege to just go to the orchestra and listen to the new symphony or whatever. And sort of this is the more intimate settings of learning and getting to know the music is by playing it in four hands and do chamber music. So that was really...
Yeah, because that's the kind of the historical way that people would have gotten to know the piece. I mean, the Coriolan Overture is premiered at the home of Prince Franz Josef von Lobkowitz. So if you were his personal acquaintance, then maybe you got to hear it live with the orchestra. But if you were just a normal music lover, in the 19th century, then you'd have to learn it from duets like this. You didn't have recordings. You didn't have, like, symphonies were very few and far between also, like orchestras. So it is a bit of historical perspective, and also it's just a completely different experience. It's almost like a different piece of music when you play it piano four hands, because there's more flexibility. You lose the orchestral color, but what you gain in terms of just having two musicians on one instrument, and in terms of the intimacy, in terms of the expressive possibilities, it's really fun exploring that.
Yeah, I mean, it's always nice. I feel like now everything becomes so easy, right? With the technology and like recordings and Spotify, and everything is free. And so it's sometimes we forget like this type of things exist even. It's just like, I very rarely like hear like symphony transcriptions for like four hands like being played. And then so it's always really, really nice to like rediscovering like all of this repertoire that we have, but not often played, I guess.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that was really fun.
Okay, I just want to say thank you so much, Stephanie. Thank you so much, Edward, for joining us today. Don't forget to keep on subscribing to us. Oh yeah, of course. And don't forget to keep subscribing on Indonesia International Piano Competition for more of our feature artist performances and also interview. Thank you.
Thank you, Edith.